When you set color as the input type, you effectively ask for a color picker. And that's all it takes to put a color picker on the page. Let's see that in our Chrome browser. We update the page. We now have color. And when we click on color, a full color picker opens up. We can choose a red, and then we can move within the hues and intensity setting, either hue, saturation, and luminosity, or red, green, blue. And if we get a color we particularly like, we can add that to our custom colors. Creating a data list requires the cooperation of two controls, an input and a data list. We begin by adding an input, setting its type just to text, and we set the list property to the name of the data list that we're going to place immediately below the input. For data list, all we need to do is assign an ID and make sure it matches the ID that we put into the text block. Within the data list, we can put our data, which we do with the option keyword, and then a label, as well as a value. It's the value that will be displayed. Let's add a second value. And then we can copy and paste to add a third value. That's all it takes to create a data list. Let's just review quickly. We have an input whose type is text and whose list value is the ID of our data list element, and the data list element is populated with options. Let's save that and look at that in our Chrome browser and update. And now we have a data list. It looks just like a text block, but when I put my cursor in and tap the left mouse, the drop down opens up and I can pick from one of these values. I can also type in a value. So I have the best of both. I can pick or type, making this essentially a combo box. The progress bar and the meter are very similar, although they're intended for different purposes. The progress bar is intended for, surprise, progress. The value indicates how far you have progressed so far, and maximum indicates how far you need to progress in order to complete whatever it is the progress bar is monitoring. Let's take a look at a progress bar in Chrome. You can see that the progress bar displays vividly how far you are along in your progress, and you can imagine updating this progress bar as you complete a task or some other lengthy activity. The meter, however, is used to show a scale, but not for progression. It's intended to represent a known range. For example, bandwidth usage. There are a number of attributes associated with the meter. These include minimum and maximum to set the bounds, value to determine the value measured, and low, high, and optimum to set segments within the range. Let's set the minimum equal to 10, the maximum equal to 100, the value equal to 50, low equal to 20, that's the highest value of the low range, high equal to 70, that's the lowest value of the high range, and optimum equal to 50 as well. And of course, you may want to play with these values to see the different effects. Let's save that and see that inside our browser. Update the browser, and you can see the meter is green. It's at the optimum. It's up to the browser how it displays when it's at optimum or in the low range or the high. For example, if we change the current value to 80, which puts it in the high range, and then save and return to our browser and update it, we see that the meter has turned yellow, indicating that it's in the high range. In HTML5, you can have controls outside the form that are tied to the form. Here we've created an input of type text that sits outside the form block after the close to the form. To tie it to the form, we simply use the form property and give it the name of this form, which we can find by scrolling up and seeing that the form ID is my form. We'll scroll back down and put my form into the form ID, and this input is now considered as if it were part of the form. We can see that by saving the file, returning to Chrome, updating, and if we fill in some fields and then go to other text and fill in this field, when we submit the form, that field is submitted with it, as if it is part of the form, which it is by way of the form tag. In this module, we looked at creating forms with HTML5. We looked at many of the new input types, including date and time, month and week, range, which we were able to modify in the CSS to be able to show the start and end points. We looked at search, telephone, email, which you will remember does check to make sure we have a valid email form, color, the color picker. We also looked at a data list and how to create that with an input box, and we looked at the progress and meter controls.